Communications Intern, and today we have multiple guests with us participating in our open mic night as part of QEP Week 2017. Each of these individuals are members of Spitfire Poetry Group here in Savannah, Georgia. Sitting here with us, we have Justin Toney, aka Soul Quest. He is a graduate of Armstrong State University, whose work has been published in several publications, such as Inner Child Press, a gathering of words, poetry, and commentary for Trayvon Martin, and his own collection of poetry, Evolution of Soul, A Journey Through Poetry. We also have Jive English, a native of Ohio and current host and head coordinator of Spitfire Saturdays Open Mic and Showcase. Glance, a poet from Miami, Florida, who made his way to Savannah, Georgia after serving in the military, and Trelani, a graduate of Savannah State University who has published 5 titles, including The Powerful Woman Who Ain't Afraid to Curse When Communicating with God. Hello, guys. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so my first question, and we can just go around and everybody can go ahead and give their own answer. Could you please share with us the history of Spitfire Poetry Group when was the group created, excuse me? What are the goals? Is Spitfire Poetry Group just for poetry, or is it for like arts in general, all different kinds?
You want the first one, or?
I'm gonna let one of you guys go with the like info from like back when.
Okay. But
as far as Spitfire Poetry Group being just poetry, no, not necessarily. It's pretty much built off the foundation of poetry, but what we do is we consider it taking a different approach to like developing musical talents. So instead of starting off like from a musical perspective, start off with the growth of the intellect through poetry, writing, reading, and like developing those poetic skills, which then in turn makes the music better.
That's true. And as far as the history of speaking with Marquise, one of the co-directors of Spitfire Poetry Group, and also one of the co-founders of Spitfire Saturdays, along with Joshua Davis. Started back in 2000, 2001, the turn of the millennium, with Ralph Renaissance and also the late Clint D. Powell, and they got with a group of other poets and artists and just individuals around Savannah, and they were just performing at different venues. And then they started performing at the open mic, working with AWOL and so forth, and then from there, that amalgamation of individuals grew into what became Spitfire. And then even then, they didn't really have a home until we found the Muse in 2011, and sadly to say, the Muse just closed down, but that was our home for several years. And from that point on, we've continued to grow, and we're going to be at a new place at the Black Box Theater at 9 West Henry Street, so that's where we're going to be now, our new home.
Okay. So how did you all become involved with Spitfire?
I was the newest, I think, so I'll go first.
I actually met Clinton Powell before I knew anything about Spitfire in and of itself. And I actually met him because of this guy. We both went to college together. And just like a quiet paper poet, one of those type of people, I did it for myself. He was being nosy. Asked me what I was doing. He invited me to an open mic, and from there I met Clinton Powell
At Fat Cats.
At Fat Cats. It's a little, like a hole in the wall in Hinesville, Georgia. And from there, it was a whole world that kind of just got open to me. I had no idea that this existed at the scale and the level and the robustness of talent that was in Savannah and surrounding areas. From there, I met the co-directors after Clinton passed, unfortunately. And from then on, it's been like a roller coaster ride. It's been one of the best things that's ever happened to me.
I think I'm the newest. I just declared that I'm in the group. I was like, am I even in Spitfire? And he was like, yeah, she was Spitfire. But me and one of the co-directors, Marquise Williams, so we actually teach together too, through Deep. And that's a local nonprofit here. It's a creative writing program for high schoolers and middle schoolers. So we have a cohort of high school students that we teach at Carnegie Library. And what was it? There was an event at the Chatham County Sheriff's Office, and it was a poetry event there, and he invited me to come, and that's another reason I was like, it's not just poets, because I never considered myself a poet. A storyteller, yes. I started off with fiction, and then I migrated on into nonfiction. But poetry, I was just like, I did it when I was 11. I don't think I'm a poet. And I wrote something, and they loved it, so I performed it. And so I was like, okay, I like it. I'm feeling it. Yeah, that's how I got involved with Spitfire.
Okay.
I thought you were going to go.
Oh, just real quick, like you said, after being at Fat Cat in 2011, well, 2009 and 10, and then we actually were on Savannah State campus with EP, Ernestine Purdy of Spiritual Detox. And then she told us about Spitfire. So yeah, we got Spitfire, and talked to them because we were doing Savannah Industry Night. And that summer 2011, we met them, and ever since then, from the Muse, we've been a part of the family.
I was introduced to Spitfire, like, for me it was somewhat odd, but it was somewhat like kind of destined, and I kind of like just didn't question it too much. But while I was still stationed at Fort Stewart and in the military, I came to Savannah State in the room that's directly across from here for an event where all I remember the headline was like this band from Atlanta called Grits and Jelly Butter.
I've seen them recently, yeah.
And I've never had a chance to interact with the Savannah community before then, because I just went to work and went home. So when I went to that event, I seen somebody perform on stage. I've seen Clinton Powell, and I've seen Marquise perform on stage. I think this was either 2008 or 2009. And then I went to Iraq, and when I got back from Iraq, I got out of the military probably 6 months later. But once I got back from Iraq, I did my first performance at the Sentient Being, and some of the junior members of the poetry group at the time approached me and asked me if I wanted to be a part. And I was like, no, not at all. And then I went. At the time, I enrolled at Savannah Tech, and when I enrolled at Savannah Tech, I ended up having a English class, and the person sitting beside me was the dude who I seen performing at the Grits and Jelly Butter performance. And come to find out it was Marquise, then come to find out Marquise was the leader of the group that those two junior poets who were trying to recruit me, they were under him. So since I met Marquise, I was like, you know what? You're dope. Because that's all I remembered from the event was I didn't remember the words he said verbatim, but I remember having wow, that's amazing. I was thinking I could do that, but I don't know how to I didn't know how to find that outlet. So when I actually met him, I was just down from then, and I think that was 2011. So since then I've just been as active as I could be, aside from doing school.
Okay. So in each of you all's opinion, what do you think makes a poem good? If there is a
I guess the first thing, there's two things. I think honesty and vulnerability. A good poem makes the person who writes it, makes them vulnerable, because it's your inner workings. It's some of you, and it has to be honest. It has to come from a place that's real, regardless if it's even a fictional portrayal of something. It has to be come from a place of honesty. I don't think there's a style necessarily, but I think those are the two things. If you're honest and you're vulnerable, your audience isn't going to feel you, regardless of what you say.
And from what I learned through the unorthodox and then the actual training with school and both sides of it, you have your talent and your skill. People are blessed with their gifts like we have been naturally, so it comes out of us. We don't know anything about it. When I first started writing poetry, I didn't know anything about it at all for several years. Then I got to school, it became better. So it comes with the talent, but it doesn't stop at talent. Then it comes with the skill, crafting that. You have to get better at it. Just like anything else you do, we continue to write, continue to learn. So if you just sit on it, or you believe you're already the best, you're never going to grow. So I believe those are also two big elements, already having the skill, but training that skill.
And I just say how it feels. Just when you're writing it and you're reciting it for yourself and going over it, and then not always when you perform it, because sometimes people won't feel it, but you like, I'm okay if I feel it and y'all don't feel it, whatever. But,
Right.
but it does. It boosts. It boosts that energy even more when they love it too, just as much as you love it. Like you said, you're just honest in your expression, and just I gave it in this piece. I didn't just tell you, like I showed you, and I broke it down, and I gave you me. Yeah.
My perspective on what makes good poetry is probably a bit different. I purposely choose to go the total unorthodox route of writing, and the reason being is because I feel that poetry is the truest expression of the heart. Like, it's almost like God speaks through you when you write. It's complete honesty, and like SoQuest said, there's a difference between talent and skill, and I feel like I gravitate more so towards uniqueness, because from listening to poetry and from the small amount of poetry that I've read in my lifetime, I noticed that like it's very easy for people to like be very technically skilled at something somebody else has already mastered, but to come in with like a different approach where it's like, this is innovative, something about what he did or she did like really captures me, but I don't know what. To me, that's like the defining moment where it's like, you have my attention. And it's like, I try not to be like extra critical, especially like as a performing poet, but it's like I always look for like, how are you gonna do this differently? Because this is an art form that has been around since the creation of words or written language, and it could be like traced back to like what, Queen and Nana or something like that. So it's like, how can you do this thing that is like so old? How can you make it new or fresh? And that's what I usually like look for good poetry.
Yeah.
Okay, so when did you all first start writing, and what made you feel the need to express yourself this way through writing?
I started writing when I was about, I'm gonna say elementary school. I don't remember the particular age, maybe 3rd or 4th grade. And I went to the book fair. That was like one of my favorite times of year. And I used to saved up my lunch money and everything. And I got the diary with the key. I just couldn't, like, I got a key? Can't nobody go in here? And I got my diary with the key, and that's when I just started writing. I actually stopped writing for a long time. My mom actually picked my lock, went in my lock, read my diary, and she cried because of what she read. And so that just made me devastated me, and I stopped. I didn't start back writing until my senior year undergrad here at State. And I started back writing just because I used to read a lot. I used to be a 911 dispatcher while I was going here too. And we had a lot of downtime. So we read, and it was like, and I would go into these habits of like, okay, one book sucked, put that down, get another book. That one sucked, this one sucked. I was like, you know what, I can do it. If they writing books, and I can do it. And I don't know, and I did it, and I've been writing since.
Nice.
Well, I've been writing since I didn't know it was called poetry when I first started doing it. I was like 6, and something compels you to do it. Like there's certain people who are compelled to, like they're gifted with something, and it's not that greatness in me. I mean, I do believe God gives certain things to certain people, and it was just something that was in me that I just kept doing for some reason. When I first did it, I wrote about anything. It'd be nature, it'd be what a 6-year-old can conceive about love or whatever, and I tried to understand. It was my way of trying to understand the world in this very finite space called, poetry, and I just tried to do it as best as I could to make myself feel like I understood me. I think that's what I was doing. And I was 6, and I never knew what it was. And then when hip hop came along, I'm a little older. So when hip hop came along, I started to want to do that. And that took me into, it took me into a realm that kind of got, like, I guess what he was saying, kind of got cliche, because commercialized art forms tend to be uniform, and you want to break away from that. And I think poetry has always been that avant-garde thing. But when I came back to poetry, I think I was like 24. I was also a soldier. I was in Iraq when I wrote my first spoken word piece after I understood what spoken word was. But yeah, I was like 6, and I always wrote poetry, and I used to keep books of it, like books, and I used to keep them stacked away. I used to always keep them in my backpack, and I used to take that backpack with me everywhere I went. Like, and if something came in my mind, something I saw, I just rip out a page and just start jotting it down. And that backpack was filled with half-written things that, maybe a year or two later I'll come back and go, wow, that was crazy. And it would, almost, invoke the memories that came with those words. But I've been doing it for a long time. I have no technical skill whatsoever. I only write what I feel, when I feel it, how I feel it. I have no ability to, like, synthesize anything, like technical.
I remember beginning to write poetry when it had to be 6 because I was in the 1st grade, and like I was like in love with this girl named Ashley, and like I remember my first poem being like roses are red, violets are blue, but I didn't know a lot of words, so there was a lot of like words that were just like one letter with a period after it, and I knew what the word was, but I couldn't like spell it. So like it went from there, and then it just developed like I know like it was just like always like something that I didn't know that people shared it. I thought it was like a personal thing. As it like developed more, and then like by the time I became, I think either 13 or 16, like I was like so proficient at the style that I've created that I was ready to share it to people. And when I started sharing it, I started getting like pretty good feedback, and then it just made me dive in deeper and deeper. But I don't know anything about like styles or it was never something where it was like a logical thing to me. It was always something like, I feel this way. Now I'm going to use my pen to best express the way I feel. And then what I realized is that the pen was only the first step. When you actually perform it, like the emotion that you actually invoke when you speak it, like brings life, and then like allows people who hear it to like actually like get perspective of your story.
And me personally, I was on this little trip, my mom's church, and I was bored, so I was playing tic-tac-toe by myself. I wanted to write a song. I didn't know anything at all. I just wanted to write something. And I wrote this poem, Beautiful Summer Morning. And that was like my only piece I ever wrote. And then the next piece, about a girl. At first, the girl's name was Angelica, but then I realized a year later, it was really, when I was talking about this person, it was really about this other girl I had a crush on. Her name was Ashley, too. And this girl, for the life of me, for years, has never let that go. And I wrote poems about her, but that's another story. But it was like one poem a year. I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but I was born to writing songs, wanted to be a rapper, wanted to be a singer. I was like, I want to get into this, get all the girls, I didn't know poetry was that thing, I known then, But, and in the Army, I'm still writing songs and then raps, some poems, but then not until 2009 when I went to this place called Fat Cats and then started seeing spoken word, and then seeing those poets, seeing their delivery and how they're expressing themselves and AWOL, sentient being, especially Spitfire. It has definitely grown since then, from me writing at 14, my first poem, up until the Army, not knowing what I'm doing, and several years, like not knowing structure, not knowing sonnet, none of that stuff, until college. I took a poetry class, and then learning that. So I have that aspect, but I don't do that too much. I still write from myself with some aspects of it, but especially with spoken word, you can be more free. And I'm learning I can just write and not have any worries about where the words are, but just how I express them. And seeing so many people express themselves differently, and that's always been my tenet of what I'm doing, expressing myself differently, but being versatile as much as possible, but still speaking from myself honestly, and having fun with it sometimes, whether I'm embarrassing myself, get more personal recently, because I used to be more private with my stuff. But then I found this is my outlet of really expressing myself to the world and even helping those who can appreciate or relate to what I'm saying.
So at Savannah State University, we have the Right Attitude, a campus-wide initiative that advocates the importance of writing and gives different writing-related opportunities to students. So besides improving their writing skills, they can improve their attitude about writing. What would you say to encourage students to have a positive attitude towards writing?
Well, the first thing I'll say is that don't be afraid to share what you have, because there's somebody who's going to feel what you're saying. And a lot of people feel like, well, I'm not good enough, or I can't write this, or nobody's going to like it. First thing first, don't worry about what any of the other person is going to think about what you're writing, because as we said here, it's your expression. That's the first step. And then practice it on your own, for those who feel comfortable around your friends or family. And then if you feel like you want to give it out to an audience, get over your stage fright. If you have it, then that's the next step. But the first thing is believing in yourself and doing this for yourself. And then if you want to do it for others, then you can do so. But make sure you do it for yourself and keep working at it.
Why y'all looked at me?
would
It's
say-
like an order.
I would
and
say
you just
relax.
skip.
It's not mad. There's no particular right or wrong. I mean, there are rules in writing, but the rules can be broken, fortunately. That's what I love about it. And to figure out what you don't like about it. So when I was working with the QEP, something I used to ask the students was, what don't you like about writing? And a lot of them didn't even know what they didn't like about writing. So first figure out what you don't like about it, and then most likely it's things that you can maneuver. Most times it's past trauma. It's the English teacher who took a red pen and just bled all over your paper. And you know, and in those instances, you know, that's something that you can actually acknowledge, that happened, and move on from that. And then like Justin was saying, and just start writing for yourself with the door shut and with the thought that no one is ever going, I'm just writing this for me. Whatever comes out, it's not for no one else's eyes.
I would say 3 main things. 1, read. Read a lot.
Yeah.
Read outside of your comfort zone. What I would recommend is read good books, because if you read trash books, it makes you not want to read anymore. So get good books, because the reading really helps to inspire what you write. This second thing I would like to say is writing is the only way you can really get an idea of who you actually are. We absorb so much information and we're fed so much things that we have no time to sit there and reflect what our thoughts are. And when we get a chance to express them in poems, prose, outside of the academics standpoint where it's I'm going to write this paper, I'm going to write this essay. When you actually get a chance to write for yourself, you have a chance to go back and look at what you were thinking, how you felt, the emotions that you were going through in a certain epoch of time that you may not be in when you go back to read that. And lastly, I would say define who you are. Uniqueness is key, because if you sit there, you try to emulate somebody else, that whatever you try to emulate from somebody else, you're adapting that into your, I call it creative DNA. Define who you are. Make sure that you sound unique to who you are, not the culture that you're a part of, not the community that you're around. These are already in play, but focus on being who you are so you can represent that culture or that community. That's it.
To stay positive about writing, I just think you have to stay positive about writing. Man, you have to find out why to love it. I guess on the opposite side of finding out what you don't like about it, find out what you love about writing. Find out what inspires you to write. Find that thing that makes writing necessary for you. Wins, losses, loves, hate, pain, whatever that thing that drives you, find a reason to jot it down. And again, it becomes your history. When you revisit it, you're revisiting your history. This is your story. This is your oral tradition, and you get to tell it to your satisfaction, and you get to tell it to beautiful audiences and touch and embrace people who wouldn't know you any other way. So we all have a personal history, and I think if you find your personal voyage in life positive, then you'll find something positive to write about.
Well, on behalf of the QEP, I would like to thank all of you for coming out to Savannah State University and participating in our QEP week.
Thank you
Oh,
very much.
thank you. Thank you.